Hi students. Okay, what we're going to do today is we're going to look at the factors that organisms in the wild have to cope with within their environment and how those factors may influence their population size. So here I've got a couple of pictures. I've got some dandelions and a rabbit, and I want you to imagine that you're either a dandelion or that you are a rabbit living in the wild, and have a little think about what do you have to cope with to allow you to survive. So I suggest that you pause the video just for a minute and have a little think about those factors. Okay, so if you imagined that you were a dandelion, the types of things that you would have hopefully thought about were, first of all, being eaten by herbivores. You would have also had to think about how much sunlight you were getting and whether you had to compete with grass or trees or other weeds to get that sunlight, how you had to compete for water, compete for space, and also things like, what's the pH of the soil like? Does it suit you? Is it too acidic? Is it too alkaline? Is it windy? Is that going to blow you over? Is it a hot sunny day? Is it a cold wintry day? And as you can see, what I've done here is I've split those factors into two different groups. We've got biotic factors. Bio, remember, means living. So living factors, so another animal eating you is obviously going to be a living factor, competing with another living organism for sunlight, water, space, again, biotic factors. And then there's abiotic ones, which are basically things within the environment and the weather. If you imagined that you were, in fact, a rabbit, similar types of things. You had predators. Are you going to get eaten by a fox? Are you competing with other animals in your environment, sheep, goats, for instance, who might be eating your food? Are you competing with each other within the rabbit population for food? Are you competing for water, competing to space? Have you got somewhere to live? And again, you've got the abiotic factors. Is it windy? Is there pollution? Is it wet? Is it dry? Is it hot? Is it cold? And so we can split all of these factors within the environment into living factors, biotic, and non-living factors, abiotic. So I've got here a pyramid of biomass. We looked at these in the last lesson. So at the very bottom, remember, we have the producer. So I've got the grass, and then we've got the rabbit, which eats the grass, and we've got the fox at the top, which eats the rabbit. So remember, these are our trophic levels. First trophic level grass, second trophic level rabbit, third trophic level fox. And each one of those bars will decrease as we move along the food chain or up the pyramid, because energy, remember, is being lost at each stage of the food chain. So things like used in respiration for heat, lost in urine, lost in feces, that type of thing. Okay, so what we're looking at here is those factors and how they may influence the population and therefore the biomass of a group of organisms. So, question, if there's an increase in rabbits, what's going to happen to the number of foxes? Well, nice and easy. If there's more food, because more rabbits, there's more food for the foxes, and so we would expect the population of foxes to increase. So let's look at another one. So there's now more foxes. What's going to happen to the population of rabbits? Well, now there's more predators around, so we're going to expect the population of rabbits to decrease because there are more foxes that are going to be eating them. So population sizes in the wild fluctuate. They go up and they go down depending on the number of predators that are around or how much prey, how much food is around. And they don't ever really remain constant. They're constantly fluctuating up and down, a kind of around one size. So this graph here is called a predator-prey graph, and this is how we show the population sizes of organisms within the environment. So we've got time along the bottom, so that might be years, for instance, it might be months, and then we have the number at the side, that's the population size. We've got marked in red the number of prey, and we've got marked in blue the number of predators. Now remember, there's always going to be a lower number of predators, as we've just talked about in the slide before, because we've got that biomass gets less as we move along the food chain because energy is being lost. So the predator line is always lower, and you can see that if the prey increase, the predator line also increases, but there's a little bit of a lag in between the two. Why do you think there might be a lag in that point there? Have a little think, pause the video, and then I'll give you the answer in a second. Okay, so there's going to be a lag because if the prey numbers increase, the foxes, let's say, if it's prey's rabbits, foxes are predators, the foxes are going to start eating more prey, and it's just going to take a bit longer for them to start to reproduce and their population to increase. And that's why we have that little bit of lag within these graphs. Okay, so here's an example that the exam board want you to know, and this involves the organisms snowshoe hares, which are the prey, and lynx, which are their predators. And you can see that there's a nice predator-prey graph, as we've just seen, and we've got the time in years along the bottom, so going from 1850 to about 1940. Now, the thing to note about this graph is that we've got two different scales going on here. We've got a scale on the left-hand side, which is the 1,000 of hares, and that corresponds to the blue lines. If we want to read off any values to do with the snowshoe hares, we would read along on the left-hand side axes. The lynx corresponds to the right-hand side axes. So instead of reading to the left, what you would do is find your point on the graph and you would read along to the right-hand side to give the value of thousands of lynx. But we know there's always going to be a lower number of predators than they are prey. I've got a couple of questions here for you to have a go at in a moment. They always use the word explain with these questions, and they're worth 3 marks. So what they're asking you to do is, 1, to describe what's happening, so say what you see, read it from the graph, and then you need to make 2 explanations about what is happening because of that. Okay, so question 1, explain what happened to the number of snowshoe hares in 1923, and then question 2, explain what happened to the number of lynx in 1925. So have a look at both of those questions, see if you can make a point for each, and then do 2 explanations. Right, so let's have a look at those answers. So question 1, explain what happened to the population of snowshoe hares in 1923. So let's make our statement first, our description. So for the first point, the population of snowshoe hares decreased. So now let's say why. Because there was an increase in the lynx population, that's my first why, so more hares were eaten. That's my second explanation. Okay, so I've scored 3 points there. Let's now try question 2. Explain what happened to the population of lynx in 1925. So let's describe it first. The population of lynx decreased. And now let's do our 2 explanation points. Because the population of hares was falling, so there was less food for the lynx to eat.